Tamás Cservenyák, Read This to Be a Better Manager. Audiobook. Forward to the English edition. In early 2013, I was persuaded by several managers in my professional network to create a concise, scientifically grounded, and straightforward ebook on people management. Although I initially believed there were already plenty of management books on the international market, I found myself at a loss when asked to recommend a single short book for those seeking to improve in this area. While I could list numerous excellent titles, they collectively amounted to thousands of pages. Thus, I embarked on the task of distilling the most essential people management practices into a compact format. Over the past decade, more than 100,000 copies of this book have been downloaded in a country with just 10 million inhabitants in a language unique to our region. In 2024, I decided to publish the English edition, with some updates and revisions. I hope that the translation will provide added value to a broader audience. Tamás Cservenyák, Co-founder. Act 2 Manage Application. Budapest, August 2024. Introduction. If you've ever attended one of my leadership development programs or read my blog, you know that I don't like to preach. Instead, I share proven practices and insights from international leadership literature, leaving it up to you to decide what's useful for your own context. After all, you can't prescribe one-size-fits-all recipes for every situation. I also make a point of always referencing the credible sources of the science behind the ideas and addressing exceptions where relevant. But this little ebook is going to be different. On the following pages, I'll be giving you the straight talk. What's covered here won't answer every leadership question that comes up, but it will be applicable to about 80% of your daily challenges. So, if you follow the advice given here, you're guaranteed to become a much better leader. For the remaining 20%, you'll still need to improvise based on your own experiences. I've been working with leaders for decades. I had the feeling that many leaders weren't making the most of readily available, and not rocket science, leadership knowledge. This was confirmed when we conducted research with the KPMG Academy. Of 16 key leadership behaviors, only a few were used by more than half of the respondents in their daily work. We also asked what they consider most important for a leader to do. Not even half of the respondents reported to apply the top 5 leadership practices, and there were even some that less a quarter of them used. So, you're not doing even what you think is important. This groundbreaking work is divided into 2 parts. The first part will tell you what you should do regarding 12 aspects of leading people. The second part, with its 4 chapters, will focus on managing yourself. And no, I'm not talking about self-promotion here. How can someone have the courage to lead others if they can't manage themselves effectively? If you don't have a clear understanding of your strengths, weaknesses, motivators, values, principles, roles, and goals, if you struggle with time management, if you can't handle the stress, if you fail to achieve personal goals or deliver results, how on earth will you achieve team or organizational goals with a bunch of people depending on you? You can start reading from either part, according to your preference. I aim to be concise and easy to read. Therefore, I won't constantly weave the scientific and experiential background behind my statements and advice into the text. At the end, there's a list of related literature because obviously, I didn't come up with all this wisdom on my own. For the same reason, I won't always go out of my way to mention exceptions. Of course, there are exceptions to every recommendation and finding, but just because I haven't written them down doesn't mean I'm unaware of them. The point is, most of the time, this is how it works. I'll also try to write in a style that feels like I'm personally sharing these insights with you over a couple of drinks on a terrace. Well, maybe a bit more polished than that. At the end of each chapter, you'll find questions. If you take them seriously and try to act on each one, you'll be on your way to becoming a better leader. You can choose from 3 ways to process this information. The first is to read the whole book, nod along, occasionally shake your head in disbelief, and then make no changes in your leadership practice. The second approach is if you truly want to improve and are disciplined enough. Read each of the 16 chapters again over the next 16 weeks, and then, based on your answers to the questions, make one change in your practice each week according to the advice. In 6 months, you'll make quantum leaps in developing your leadership skills. The third option is, if you don't want to tackle it alone, we can help you integrate the important changes into your leadership practice through coaching sessions online. So, let's dive into the best practices for leading people. Part 1. Leading people. 1. Build a climate of trust. Easy to say, right? When there's trust, everything falls into place. Colleagues know their stuff and get it done. You don't have to constantly fear where the next setback will come from. You're not worried that tasks will be ignored, deadlines missed, or outcomes subpar. Most of the time, you can count on things happening as discussed, and if something goes awry, you'll hear about it in time, not just after the fact. You can also count on people taking ownership of tasks and problems, giving their best effort. A promise or handshake is enough to ensure that no one is going to intentionally deceive you. Without trust, things become slow, cumbersome, and costly. Just think about how torturous it is to board a plane. Or how time-consuming and expensive it is to close a significant business deal, where instead of trust, auditors and lawyers have to convince us that they're not about to screw us over. Within a company, you'll need constant and strong control, threats, and carrots to get your team to comply or to deter them from breaking the rules. So, how does mutual trust develop? It certainly doesn't happen on command. The process starts with you. The first step is to prove that you deserve the trust of your environment. The bad news is that building a climate of trust is a slow, challenging, and tedious process. However, you can destroy trust with a single careless move. Just a drop of urine can ruin a steaming hot chicken soup on the table. You build trust, for instance, by being straightforward rather than scheming. I don't mean being an insensitive lout and confusing honesty with bluntness. I mean communicating your genuine opinions, intentions, and feelings in an appropriate manner. My next suggestion is to keep your promises. Do what you said, when you said it, and in the way you said it. Be reliable in both small things and big ones. This includes respecting others' time. Of course, occasionally things come up, and if so, let them know in advance if possible, but at the very least, apologize afterward. However, this should be the exception, not the norm. Trust is also built when you show respect towards others and speak respectfully about those who aren't present. Don't belittle anyone who's not there because your conversation partner might wonder if you speak about them the same way when they're not around. Your team will trust you if you listen to their input and accept their perspectives, even if you don't necessarily agree with them. Just accepting that they have their own view is enough. If you dismiss their perspective as nonsense, even if you're right, it erodes trust. Additionally, it helps a lot if you clarify mutual expectations with others and then evaluate performance based on those expectations. Kind gestures also positively impact the level of trust as they show that you're paying attention to the other person. Lastly, I want to mention integrity as a key factor in building a trustful environment. If your colleagues perceive that you don't adhere to written and unwritten rules and that you're playing fast and loose, they'll easily assume that the same lack of adherence applies to them and that overall, a fair and honest mode of operation isn't expected. Perhaps the golden rule is the most helpful: treat others the way you'd like to be treated. This is how mutual trust can be built, and as a leader, it's up to you to initiate this process. Questions. How would you assess the level of trust within your team? What evidence do you have to support this assessment? If you honestly reflect, what habits of yours do not build trust within your environment? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 2. Have a vision and communicate it regularly. Being a leader implies having followers. But I wouldn't call it following if people stick with you just because you're the manager or because they're getting paid. In that case, it's just a forced, soulless shuffle behind you. For a team to willingly and enthusiastically follow you on a journey, it's essential to have a vision of where you want to go. When you read about successful leaders of big companies, it's easy to feel uncertain about how you can come up with a compelling vision for your own area. But you've got to come up with something. that's why you're the leader, not someone else. Of course, people are attracted to being part of creating a great product or service, but it can also be motivating if, for example, they can improve, streamline, or speed up a process. It's not just smartphone manufacturers or pharmaceutical researchers who can come up with great ideas. Even the head of accounting in a medium-sized local company can if their aspirations go beyond just getting through the day and paying VAT by the deadline. Smart employees need to see some progress, development, or improvement in their environment, or they'll become bored with their work. If you have forward-looking ideas that can engage their creative energy for the coming months or even years, you can harness that drive into the organization's sales and keep your team motivated. There are two approaches you can take if you want to create a unifying and attractive vision for your team. The first is to come up with the vision yourself and then sell it to them. In this case, it's crucial to understand why your vision will be appealing to others. After all, they won't be excited just because you would be able to buy a bigger house or get promoted. The second option is to retreat with your team to a calm place, brainstorm together, and come up with a direction that benefits everyone. But be aware of the risk that the final outcome might differ from your personal vision. There's nothing more demoralizing than taking your colleagues on an intellectual and physical retreat, only to disregard the ideas generated there and continue down the path set by the leader. However, if you succeed in developing a vision that the majority finds desirable, it will be much easier to guide people toward that shared vision in daily activities. It will act like a compass. Formulating or co-creating the vision isn't the end of your job. The vision needs to be communicated continuously because people tend to forget it in the rush of daily work. Additionally, the vision should be reflected in day-to-day decision-making and behavior. The entire effort loses credibility if, for example, the goal is to achieve high quality, yet a customer complaint is dismissed with a shrug, or you settle for good enough with the products you release. Questions. What is the vision for the company, department, or team you lead? What evidence do you have that this vision is not just appealing to you? How regularly do you discuss the vision with your team and its reflection in daily work? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 3. Establish clear boundaries. I think job descriptions are a thing of the past. Even where they exist, they're rarely updated, and the rapid changes in daily work ensure that they become outdated within 6 to 12 months. However, this doesn't mean that individuals shouldn't know their responsibilities or that clear organizational boundaries aren't needed. On the contrary, clear boundaries are crucial. Many conflicts and missed results can be traced back to two common problems: 1. People stepping on each other's toes and intruding on each other's territories, and 2. The reluctance to pick up the slack in the no-man's land between job roles or departments, with people just pointing fingers elsewhere. One of the first elements of clear boundaries is the previously mentioned vision. Goals should stem from this vision. It's up to everyone to determine the appropriate time frames for planning, but at a minimum, you should decide what you want to achieve in the given year. The goals for specific areas should support these organizational objectives. Whether you break these goals down to team or individual levels is a matter of preference. In places where products are primarily created by groups, individual work goals might seem artificial and meaningless. In other contexts, they could be essential. To avoid constant conflicts, you need to take the time to clearly define who is responsible for what within your organization, area, or team, whether individually or in collaboration with others. It's not enough if only you know this. It's reasonable to communicate it to other parts of the organization. Since you can't anticipate everything and the environment is constantly changing, you also need a method for dealing with situations where responsibilities are unclear. What's the usual procedure if no one takes ownership? What should be done if multiple people think something is their responsibility? The key point here is that establishing boundaries is essential, but it's a dynamic system that requires regular maintenance. Maintenance, in this case, means communication sessions where responsibilities can be collectively defined in boundary cases. In addition to distributing responsibilities, it's also a good idea to define the decision-making authority at various job levels. What decisions can your employees make independently? What should they decide on but then inform their superior about? In what situations should they involve others in decision-making? When should their boss decide for them? I understand that it's not easy to come up with universal rules for this, but the clearer people are about their operational boundaries, the better they will feel at work and the more independently they can do their job. And you can trust that if necessary, they will involve you in decisions. I don't need to elaborate on why you wouldn't want to make every decision yourself or continually mediate between quarreling colleagues. Questions. How aware are your employees of their company, departmental, and team/individual goals? How do the goals support the higher-level objectives? How clear are the responsibilities within the organization or team you lead? How do you handle conflicts between departments/teams or problems that arise in the no man's land? Are people aware of their decision-making authority? Do they even have such authority? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 4. Set high-quality goals. Goal setting is a team sport. People instinctively reject imposed goals. On the other hand, if you involve them in setting these goals, they are more likely to adopt them as their own. There's also a good chance that your employees will set high standards for themselves. If they don't, you can still negotiate and adjust expectations. Even if you end up setting a higher bar, it's crucial that the employee had the opportunity to express their perspective. Meaningful goals encourage thinking and positively impact perseverance, often leading people to achieve more than they initially thought possible or even more than you expected. This results in memorable success experiences. Experience shows that some goals are of higher quality than others, meaning they are more likely to be achieved. So, how do you set such goals? The goal should be specific, measurable, and attainable. It's fine if it requires a bit of stretching, as higher goals often lead to greater performance. However, goals that feel unattainable tend to be demotivating. It's important for the leader to provide encouragement and express trust, as the employee's perception of their ability to achieve the goal matters greatly. People don't want to work on trivial or meaningless tasks, so everyone involved needs to understand why the goal or task is important. Lastly, there should be a deadline attached, otherwise, it might never be accomplished. Regarding measurability, some things are easily quantifiable, while others are not. Nevertheless, it can be simply determined whether something has been achieved or not, even if numbers are not involved. For other goals, efforts towards the end result can be measurable. For example, if you want to improve your presentation skills, it might be hard to define a measurable end goal, but you can track progress by committing to giving one presentation per month over the next 6 months and seeking feedback from a participant each time. I recommend that from now on, you neither accept nor set goals for others that do not meet the above criteria. You can assist in clarifying these goals with questions. What specifically is the goal? How will we know it has been achieved? How will the results be measured? How attainable is the goal? Why is it important? By when will it be achieved? Questions. Do you involve your employees in setting their own goals and task assignments, or do they receive them as given? What quality are the individual and group goals set in your area? What proportion of your goals are achieved? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 5. Monitor events and provide continuous feedback. One of the key indicators of effective management is whether goals are being achieved. Just as a farmer keeps an eye on his livestock to ensure they thrive, a leader needs to regularly monitor the progress of delegated tasks and projects. This doesn't mean you should constantly hover over your team, but you must check in with sufficient frequency. You can use several methods for this: maintaining a simple task list that only clears tasks once they are fully completed, holding brief status meetings for projects, scheduling one-on-one check-ins with team members, or setting reminders on your devices to review tasks at specific intervals. Use the method that best fits your style and needs. Consistent and high-quality feedback is essential for progress towards goals. It's easy to overlook this and only address issues when they arise. Positive performance is often taken for granted, while failures draw immediate criticism. The first piece of advice is not to be stingy with praise when you observe something positive. Genuine and sincere recognition can be incredibly motivating and is essentially cost-free. Supportive feedback has several characteristics. Why should feedback be supportive? Because your goal is for the employee to perform better or maintain their current level of performance in the future. You don't want to discourage them or undermine their confidence. However, it must still be honest and reflect your true experiences with their work. Good feedback should be specific, not general. For example, instead of saying you're always late, you should say last week you were late 3 times. Always is rarely accurate. Focus on the issue rather than the person. Instead of you're lazy and unreliable, say you missed the deadline for the report yesterday. Feedback should describe the situation, not label the person. Personal, general, and judgmental feedback often leads to defensive reactions or withdrawal, complicating further communication. Feedback must be reinforcing, not dismissive or condescending. Comments like "I see you still haven't understood this" or "a beginner could have done this better" only diminish the recipient's confidence and trust. Factual, precise feedback avoids these negative effects. Additionally, speak from your own perspective and avoid attributing opinions to others unless you are genuinely relaying their message. Supportive feedback should be two-way. Always ask for the other person's perspective and listen carefully. A professional technique is to pause and try to understand their viewpoint fully before responding. Your response should relate to what they have said, not just reiterate your own points. The goal is mutual understanding, even if you don't reach agreement. Feedback discussions are most effective when they lead to an action plan or next steps that positively adjust the individual's performance or behavior. Questions. How do you evaluate your own performance in following up on ongoing tasks? How consistently do you provide feedback? If you reflect honestly, how supportive is the feedback you give? How frequently do you reward good work with praise? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 6. Create a motivating work environment. Let me start with a fundamental point: people need intrinsic motivation to thrive. If you spend your time dragging or pushing stubborn employees inch by inch, you're effectively wasting your energy. While a leader can influence motivational levels, they cannot become motivated for someone else. The initial goal should be to ensure that you don't take away your team's enthusiasm for their work. Once that's under control, you can refine your motivational strategies. For centuries, employee motivation was not a topic of discussion. Poor work performance could result in severe consequences, like loss of job or even life. With the advent of a more mobile workforce and increased competition in the 1950s and 1960s, there was a significant shift towards understanding human motivation. Two main perspectives emerged, one suggesting that people are driven by internal needs and the other that behavior is influenced by environmental factors. Both views hold true. Basic drives include the need for food, shelter, and safety. Once these are met, people seek social relationships and harmony. Next comes the desire for recognition and opportunities for fulfilling work. However, not everyone is motivated by the same factors, and external factors can significantly impact motivation. In the workplace, essential needs include a reliable income, decent working conditions, and basic amenities like clean restrooms. Some companies invest in creating inspiring work environments with modern office designs, communal spaces, and even in-house chefs. Job security and a safe working environment are also critical. Once these basic needs are met, focus can shift to fostering a sense of community and recognition, and providing work that employees find enjoyable and fulfilling. Another approach is to consider that different factors drive motivation compared to those that merely prevent dissatisfaction. Hygiene factors, such as working conditions, respect, and salary, can only prevent dissatisfaction. They do not actively motivate. On the other hand, motivation comes from engaging work, achievement, responsibility, growth, and recognition. As a leader, your task is to ensure that hygiene factors are adequately addressed to avoid negative feelings. Then, provide opportunities for employees to take on meaningful work, achieve results, grow, and receive recognition. People respond strongly to rewards and punishments from their environment. If you want to encourage certain behaviors, use rewards. To discourage behaviors, use punishments or withhold rewards. I am not a strong advocate of punishment but understand that it might be necessary in some rare cases. Rewarding employees is a common practice, though many believe that money is the only motivator. However, there are numerous other ways to motivate employees beyond financial compensation. Base salary is a hygiene factor with limited long-term motivational impact. Performance-based bonuses can be motivating but might have drawbacks, such as reducing creativity and encouraging unethical behavior if not implemented carefully. During the motivation module of our deliberate leadership program, I often ask participants to rank 10 factors according to what they believe their subordinates value most. In the second round, I ask them to rank these factors based on their own preferences. The result typically shows that leaders focus on internal motivators like interesting work and professional development, while they perceive that their subordinates are primarily driven by external factors like salary and job conditions. This discrepancy highlights the importance of understanding that both leaders and employees value similar factors, though the emphasis might differ based on their positions, career stages, and personal needs. Moreover, knowledge workers often have 3 additional motivators: autonomy, professional growth, and working towards meaningful goals. As a leader, consider how you can integrate these aspects into your work environment to boost motivation and engagement. Understanding that motivation is influenced by both general and individual factors is key. Therefore, it is essential to get to know your employees better. Conversations and feedback will reveal what kind of work environment motivates them. Use this personalized knowledge to create a motivating work environment. While each individual is responsible for their own well-being, you, as a leader, can play a significant role in fostering a supportive and motivating atmosphere. Questions. What do you know about your employees' individual motivation profiles? What steps are you taking to create a motivating work environment for your team and individuals? How do you track changes in your colleagues' motivation levels and preferences? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 7. Hold one-to-one meetings to discuss performance and development. I intentionally avoided using the term performance evaluation because it has unfortunately been reduced to an administrative task in many workplaces, often becoming a mere annual formality driven by HR pressures. In some cases, it has turned into a one-sided process that demotivates employees rather than engaging them. However, this doesn't have to be the case. Employees need to receive feedback on their work from a broader perspective occasionally. They should also have the opportunity to share their own views and feel that their leader is dedicating time to focus on them, rather than just on tasks. I recommend setting aside at least an hour or an hour and a half every 3, and maximum of 6, months for each of your direct reports. These meetings serve 2 main purposes: reviewing the past 3 to 6 months in terms of achievements and results, and discussing future directions, development opportunities, motivation, career aspirations, and the possibilities and limitations within the organization. Regularly addressing these topics will prevent surprises and manage mutual expectations effectively. For a meaningful conversation, both parties need to be well prepared. The employee should reflect on their recent achievements and assess their performance and behavior. They should also think about short and medium-term development goals and career directions, including the necessary steps to achieve them. You also need to prepare before the meeting. Review the relevant period, gather concrete observations and examples to provide factual, supportive feedback rather than speaking in generalities. Think about possible development directions and opportunities. Choose a distraction-free location and time for the meeting. It's important to strive for an egalitarian dialogue, reflected in the meeting setting. Avoid sitting in your plush office chair while your colleague is in a less comfortable position. Set clear boundaries and structure for the meeting. It's useful to start with the employee's self-assessment. This can sometimes align with your own views, making it easier to agree with their evaluation. If necessary, supplement or present differing viewpoints. Avoid starting with or ending with critical feedback. Instead, integrate it throughout the discussion. Continuous feedback should address issues as they arise, rather than waiting for the quarterly or semi-annual meeting. Address areas for improvement, motivation, and long-term career plans. It's important to clarify expectations and reality. If someone is aiming too high too quickly, provide realistic feedback. Discuss existing and potential future opportunities within the organization, but avoid making promises. Instead, talk about potential paths and how to achieve them. Develop a personalized action plan with 2 to 3 steps to focus on over the next 3 to 6 months. Ensure these goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Since you're already having this discussion, take the opportunity to request feedback from the employee about your performance. What should you continue, stop, or start doing? How can you better support them in achieving their goals? At the end of the meeting, allow time for questions, express gratitude for their work over the review period, and reaffirm your confidence in their abilities. If you don't feel there's anything to thank them for, or if trust has diminished, reconsider why you are having this meeting. Of course, consider human factors as well. If someone is going through a personal crisis, offer help where you can, but remember you are not fully responsible for their personal life. Define a reasonable time frame during which personal issues might affect performance and balance this with your role as a leader. Remember, these performance and development discussions are not just administrative burdens but are among the most useful and powerful management and motivational tools at your disposal. Approach them prepared and professionally, and you will see their beneficial impact quickly. Questions. How frequently do you hold one-on-one meetings with your team members to review their work and plan their development? How well do you understand your employees' current motivation levels and development aspirations? If you conduct performance review meetings, how well does your approach align with the described practices? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 8. Develop your team as a coach. It's often tempting to simply tell someone what to do when they come to you with a problem or seek your help. Offering advice is easy and sometimes necessary, but it's less effective than it might seem. While there are occasions where giving direct advice is appropriate, particularly when someone explicitly requests it or lacks the knowledge or experience to find a solution on their own, most people have the capability to discover their own solutions. Moreover, by taking on the responsibility for the outcome, you risk becoming the fallback if things don't go as planned, which can hinder the individual's growth and learning. As a leader, shifting from giving solutions to fostering independent problem-solving can feel strange at first. Leaders are usually driven to control outcomes and employees are accustomed to receiving quick answers. It takes time to transition into a coaching role, but once you get the hang of it, you'll find that your team becomes more autonomous and you spend less time managing details directly. Employees will sense the trust you're placing in them, even if initially it's uncomfortable for them to take on more responsibility. So what exactly is coaching? It involves a series of conversations where you help the other person help themselves. You assist them in understanding their situation better, setting goals, exploring options, and making decisions about their actions. This is done through active listening and asking questions. The individual thinks through their issues and arrives at the solution that works best for them. This brief section won't turn you into a coach overnight. Formal coaching training typically requires at least 60 hours, and serious training can range from 120 to 150 hours. However, I'll outline some fundamental practices to get you started in a coaching role. Note that this approach only works if you've built a foundation of trust with your team members. When you have that trust, the simplest coaching technique is to listen attentively and show genuine interest in what your colleague is saying. Sometimes, simply listening and nodding can help the person articulate their problem, explore their dilemma, and possibly arrive at the best solution during the conversation. Your role here is to affirm their insights and commend them for their problem-solving abilities. A step further involves summarizing what you've understood from the conversation. This helps the other person clarify their thoughts and refine their understanding. Once you're adept at attentive listening, you can also reflect back the speaker's emotions, intentions, or any other impressions you have, which can enhance mutual understanding. For a more advanced approach, ask questions that facilitate the person's thinking. Effective questioning is a skill that requires practice, but here are 4 questions that can guide your colleague towards their own solutions. What exactly is the problem? What do you want to achieve with this? What options do you have? What will you do next? Questions and tasks. In what situations in your daily work would it be more beneficial to act as a coach, and in what situations should you act as an advisor? Try attentive listening when someone approaches you with a problem. See what progress you can make with this approach. During one-on-one conversations or meetings, attempt to ask questions that help the person better understand their situation, set goals, or identify the next steps. What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 9. Eradicate meaningless and aimless meetings. You spend a huge chunk of your life in meetings. It's pretty awful on its own, but what's even worse is that a lot of these meetings are as useful as a chocolate teapot. Everyone moans about them, but you rarely find a company with a proper meeting culture. The good news is, it's not rocket science, just start doing it right, and soon enough, you'll expect everyone to get their act together for well-prepped and well-run meetings. After all, it's way better to hash things out face-to-face than to fire off emails to the desk next door or the office across the hall. Here's the deal, only invite the people who actually need to be there. If someone's only got a sliver of interest, let them attend just that part. Keep meetings short and snappy. Stick to the start and end times like your job depends on it, because it kind of does. Every meeting should have a clear goal or an agenda. Send out the agenda beforehand if you can, if not, lay it out at the beginning. Designate someone to run the show, the chairperson. They're in charge of keeping things on track, on time, and making sure you actually get somewhere. You can swap out the chairperson now and then, if you like. If the meeting is just to share information, make sure there's a two-way street, otherwise, just shoot an email. If you're problem-solving or doing a follow-up, ensure each agenda item gets its due discussion and a decision. If a problem can't be solved right there, outline the next steps. Every meeting should end with either decisions or action items. Write down who's doing what and by when, so you can check on progress later. Stick to these tips, and you'll see your meetings transform from a dreaded time suck to a powerhouse of productivity. I promise, you won't regret it. Questions. How are your meetings going in the organization? Do they match up with the above description? Which points will you focus on more in your future meetings? What will you do to make the meetings you attend more effective? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 10. Involve people in decision-making. Just like with goal setting, it's worth getting your team involved in as many decisions that affect them as possible. It's another tool for motivation in your kit. The formula isn't brain surgery. People are way more likely to accept decisions if they've been part of exploring and weighing the options, rather than just being hit with the final choice. If you only give them the end result, they'll usually grumble and complain, especially if they have objections or alternative solutions that you've already considered and rejected. Then you're left wondering why they're so baffled or negative when you've already picked what you thought was the best option. There are different levels of involvement in decision-making, and it's crucial for your team to know what level they're being asked to contribute to. The most freedom is when the person makes the choice themselves. A step down from that is when you're making a joint decision, voting on something together. Another scenario is if you want to gather opinions and then make the decision yourself, which might include not taking the team's input into account. In this case, it's especially important that everyone knows that's the situation. Sometimes, they won't influence your decision at all, only be informed about it. It's essential to share the information behind the decision, so they can better accept it. Even here, they should be able to voice their opinions, and you should listen respectfully. They'll vent their frustrations, and then everyone will have to accept the decision. Personally, I think this last option should be used sparingly. Almost every decision you make should benefit from at least hearing your team's perspective. Questions. What can your people decide for themselves? How often do you involve your team in decisions that affect them? How clear is it to your colleagues what level of involvement they have in the decision-making process? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 11. Forge a team from your people. Many of the tools we've discussed so far are great for building a team. When you have a shared vision and goals, clear responsibilities, and processes for resolving conflicts, territorial or otherwise, when your reward system doesn't pit people against each other but rather encourages collaboration, when communication is supportive rather than confrontational, when meetings are meaningful and useful, and when team members can brainstorm, weigh options, and make decisions together, you're well on your way to creating a solid team. Achieving results and successes together has a powerful community-building effect. When people experience how their complementary skills can achieve far more than they could on their own, it's no longer a question of whether they want to be part of this group. When you hit those milestones, take a moment to spotlight the factors that led to the success and make time to celebrate. It's also worth defining the team's values and norms. Doing this right at the start might feel a bit forced, but in an already functioning team, it could be valuable to gather together and discuss what's important, what the team wants to become, or what it wants to remain. Besides work and results, shared experiences are also crucial. They give you something to reminisce about for years to come and help you get to know each other better. The more you know someone, the more likely you are to accept them as they are. This makes it easier to reach out to each other, whether you're asking for something or solving a problem. So, it's on you to ensure these get-togethers happen. Truly cohesive teams usually self-organize, but if that hasn't happened yet, it's your job to get things rolling. From a simple Friday pizza order to hikes and wild parties, there are plenty of options. Choose things most people are into. Just because you love paragliding doesn't mean it's the best choice for everyone. Or maybe it is. Get to know your people, and you'll figure out a few suitable events each year. Questions. Where does your group stand on the path to becoming a team? What gaps should you pay attention to? What will you do differently starting tomorrow to strengthen team spirit? 12. Help with problem solving and take on conflicts. As a coach-like leader, as mentioned earlier, you aim to empower your team to solve their own problems. You shape interpersonal relationships and team dynamics so that your colleagues can handle most issues among themselves. But that doesn't mean you should just leave them to their own devices when it comes to solving problems or dealing with inevitable conflicts. If a problem arises and your team gets stuck, it's your job to step in. Most of the time, this doesn't mean solving the issue for them but rather bringing them together and guiding them through a problem-solving process. First, get them to listen to each other's viewpoints, and even repeat back what they've heard to ensure accurate understanding. Then, ask questions to help them brainstorm multiple solutions and sketch out different scenarios. Finally, they need to reach a decision that everyone can live with. If you're acting as a mediator, make sure you stay truly neutral. If you don't, your credibility as a mediator goes down the drain. Sometimes, there might not be a solution that works for everyone, or every option might have significant drawbacks. In that case, you'll need to make the decision yourself. Conflicts are worse than problems. They can escalate and get ugly quickly. It's crucial to spot these situations early and step in promptly. Once the parties start taking shots at each other, you lose control. If people respect you and accept your mediation, there's still a chance to resolve things. You'll need to invest time and effort into fixing the situation. Sometimes, you might be too late and things might not work out. Unfortunately, at that point, it's like pulling teeth because colleagues or peers at each other's throats can cause massive damage to the organization, and that's something you can't afford. It's definitely worth thinking about a conscious strategy for dealing with problems and conflicts that directly involve you in the organization. If the issue isn't crucial, you can be passive and just let it slide. If maintaining a good relationship is your goal, you can adapt to the other party's perspective, even if you don't agree with it. If you need to assert your interests and don't care as much about the relationship, you can push your agenda through. A more cultured approach is to find a compromise, though both sides will lose something here. The best outcome is a cooperative resolution, but that requires both parties and some time. I think it's more effective in the long run if you don't just react instinctively but choose your approach to the situation. Questions. How do you usually help your colleagues with problem solving? In what situations is it important to take on conflicts? When might it be wise to choose a different conflict resolution strategy than the one you usually use? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? Part 2. Managing yourself. 1. Clarify your self-knowledge and apply the lessons. I think the most common reason for leadership failure is a lack of self-awareness. Many people don't spend any time thinking through some fundamental questions, and just as many don't realize how their behavior affects those around them. As I've said before, leading others is a bold move if you can't effectively manage yourself. Self-awareness has many facets, and understanding yourself is a lifelong learning process. It's never too late to start. Here are some things to think about so that your personal and leadership effectiveness isn't built on shaky ground. Start by gathering your past achievements and successes, then identify the strengths that helped you reach them. I mostly agree with those who say we should focus on our strengths rather than trying to improve our weaknesses. We'll only become truly proficient in areas where we're already good. However, in some roles, such as leadership, you can't afford to ignore developing necessary skills even if they don't come naturally to you. Review the sections on leading people and pick out the areas where you need to step up, even if it's not your natural talent. It's also worth reflecting on your motivation profile and career preferences. Think about whether you're truly shaping your life according to your internal drives or if you're trying to meet societal expectations instead. Unfortunately, we often realize too late that we've been focusing on the latter instead of the former. It's hard to admit. Societal expectations become so ingrained that we might think we genuinely want them. One cornerstone of personal effectiveness is focusing on things that truly matter to you and achieving results in those areas. Our environment constantly bombards us with explicit and implicit goals, pushing truly important activities out of our already limited time. Fast forward in your mind to your 80th birthday party. Picture yourself there and think about what you'd like to hear from your family, colleagues, and friends. What kind of person were you that they are grateful for? How did you live your life, and what did you dedicate your time to? What have you achieved? What principles and priorities guided you throughout your life? Why are you loved and considered a role model? The answers to these questions will reveal what is really important to you. It's unlikely to be making more money or getting lost in the whirlwind of work. To find balance in your life, it's crucial to identify your roles. You might be a parent, child, partner, sibling, relative, friend, leader of a division/organization, leader of people, project manager or team member, subordinate, owner, and, of course, yourself, who needs mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional maintenance. Overemphasizing any one of these areas can throw you off balance, and later you might regret not spending enough time with your children, losing touch with friends, neglecting your health, or becoming disengaged. You'll be able to function well in all areas that matter to you if you set goals for each role for the upcoming period, say 6 months or a year. All these self-awareness insights help in building well-functioning relationships, effective time and stress management. Questions. How well do you understand your own strengths, motivators, values, and principles? Which of your life roles do you consider important, and what are your main goals in each role? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 2. Develop effective time management habits. Effective time management does not mean cramming even more tasks into your day. Those who manage their time well are able to make time for things that truly matter to them. And what really matters can be gathered from the previous chapter. Your personal vision, values, principles, priorities, roles, and goals within those roles serve as your compass. Another key characteristic of good time management is that your goals are achieved. The third is that no area of your life should be exploited at the expense of others. Poor time management is when you achieve all your work goals but at the cost of your health or neglecting your family. From this perspective, it doesn't matter much what kind of planner or calendar program you use, how you write your to-do lists, or what tricks you use to prevent others from overwhelming you. The key is to ensure that you have time for the activities and goals that matter to you and that those goals are realized. That said, there are some useful systems for maintaining order in your life, which may be overwhelmed by a multitude of tasks. These methodologies typically encourage you to spend half a day gathering all the tasks, documents, and notes from paper and mind, then organizing them. Ruthlessly discard what you don't need, store the essential materials in an alphabetical storage system, and handle tasks that can be done quickly immediately. For the remainder, decide whether you want to delegate the tasks to someone else. If so, delegate but also keep a list of tasks assigned to others. For tasks you want to handle yourself, and those that involve multiple steps, write them in your calendar for when you will tackle them. For more complex tasks, put them on a project list, and then break them down into actionable steps on a to-do list. This allows you to continuously clear your to-do list and review weekly what the next steps are for each project. I also use such systems when I feel too busy, and they have proven effective. A half day of organizing, 3 lists, and a calendar can help regain control over your life. In addition to such comprehensive systems, there are numerous small techniques that work for individual people. Some block out times in their corporate electronic calendar for themselves, so they can work uninterrupted. Others set aside certain parts of the day as do not disturb times, even closing their doors. Some hold standing meetings to discourage long-winded discussions and coffee breaks. Others limit phone calls to specific times or delegate phone management to an assistant. If you're more active in the morning, allocate your most valuable time for important tasks rather than routine email checking. Use whatever time of day you're most effective for creative work. Keeping things organized helps you find what you need more easily, this is a given. We are all different, what works for one person might not work for another. The old saying, "He who grasps too much, holds too little," still rings true. Some productivity experts even suggest focusing on just a few important things, at least to start your day. You can then address other smaller tasks. This way, your day will end with guaranteed progress on the issues you deem essential. It's entirely different to go to bed knowing you've made progress on what matters to you, compared to feeling like you've spun your wheels all day without achieving anything, and having had no time for yourself or your family. I understand that managing this while working as an employee in an organization is much harder than when you are your own boss. As a business owner, it's not easy either. You need to create a working mode where you control a larger portion of your own calendar. This will involve saying no to many things. But remember, saying yes to something means saying no to something else, often something very important to you. Don't accept this setup, gradually take control of your life. You might not avoid all pointless meetings or unproductive activities, but you can make significant progress compared to your current situation. Finally, don't forget that you also serve as a model for your colleagues in time management. It's better if you're not the cautionary example. Questions. Are you managing to make time for all the things that matter to you? What are you not managing to address? What could you eliminate from your calendar or daily routine to make room for these important tasks? Could you benefit from a half day of organizing and a system as described above? When will you schedule this? What small trick or technique could make you more effective? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 3. Learn to manage stress. You might ponder who's under more stress: the hospital director managing a multi-million-dollar, underfunded budget, struggling to keep a 1,000-person institution afloat, possibly facing dismissal from the decision-makers? Or the nurse battling equipment shortages, working 4 shifts, and fearing for their mortgage payments? Comparing them is pointless. The key isn't whether you're under more stress than someone else, but whether you can handle it. Can you reduce, process, and manage the pressure? Stress isn't inherently bad, it pushes us into action. The problem is chronic stress, which can lead to illness and burnout. Stress has multiple sources. Life events can be stress-inducing, as can relationships, time pressure, and even your own negative expectations and worries. You can't always control life events, you can't influence who dies suddenly or when an accident occurs. What you can do is avoid piling on stressors. Positive events, like a wedding or the birth of a child, can also be sources of stress, so try not to switch jobs when a new baby is arriving. If you apply the leadership advice I've given you so far, interpersonal stress should decrease. Time pressure is best handled with the personalized time management habits discussed in the previous chapter. If you're prone to negative thinking or worrying, dive into positive psychology. It often helps to swap every anxious thought in your head for something positive. At first, it might feel artificial, but over time, it can help rid you of self-tormenting thoughts. If you feel that the problem is bigger, don't hesitate to seek professional help. If you're generally more balanced, stress won't grip you as tightly. Alongside work, a loving family, a circle of friends, cultural activities, sports, intellectual pursuits, and spiritual life strengthen your resilience. And as everyone knows, but not everyone takes advantage of, regular exercise and a healthy diet also protect against chronic stress. If you're open to it, learning yoga, meditation, or relaxation techniques can be very beneficial. Maybe as a serious leader, these ideas haven't crossed your mind. Instead of meditating, you might unwind with a few stiff drinks or dive into retail therapy. It's up to you what you incorporate into your life to ensure you emerge victorious rather than succumbing to illness or burnout. Questions. What methods do you use for stress relief? What else could work for you? How could you reduce the amount of stress you're under? How's your overall life balance? Where should you invest more energy to restore balance? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? 4. Keep learning. As an adult, learning happens when you gain some experience, reflect on it, decide whether to act the same way or differently next time, and then put your plan into action. You see whether what you tried worked out, and the learning cycle continues. This is called experiential learning. In leadership development, as with any skill building, this is what really matters, not just memorizing a list. Models are helpful, but they're meant to provoke thought and offer examples that you can evaluate to see if they're useful for you. If they are, you can try them out and use them again if they work. The chapters of this book can outline a path for your development over the next 6 months. But don't stop learning here. The world tends toward entropy, and so do you. If you don't keep yourself in check and keep evolving, your abilities will gradually decline. There are plenty of ways to stay inspired. One is to occasionally pause and reflect on your leadership practice. You can even use the chapter titles or questions from this book as a checklist. Another way is to gather and consider feedback from quarterly or semi-annual performance reviews with your direct reports. If you have a boss, their feedback can also be a starting point for personal development, as can feedback from clients or any credible person you trust. Regular reading, whether books, articles, or blog posts, is an excellent way to find inspiration. But other things, like a film, a short video from YouTube, a TED Talk, a play, or meeting interesting people, can all kickstart your learning cycle. Even taking away a single idea can be a significant gain. Top managers often find involving an executive coach particularly valuable, as there are many things they can't discuss with others. Just having someone to share dilemmas with, and who asks thoughtful questions from an independent perspective, helps maintain continuous progress and development, while also serving as a tool for stress management. Questions. What will you do over the next 6 months to aid your development? From what sources do you draw inspiration to maintain your learning? What else could you try? What will you do differently starting tomorrow? Contact for the future. I hope you found this ebook helpful. Feel free to share the download links with anyone who might benefit from it. If you're a senior leader or HR director and would like the Act 2 Manage team to assist with leadership development that truly result in behavioral change, please reach out to us by email at cservenyak.tamas@managementor.com. Act 2 Manage is a boutique firm specializing in enhancing employee engagement. Our philosophy centers on critical thinking, and we continuously refine our solutions with the latest insights from behavioral and neuroscience research to ensure measurable results. Our mission is to offer proven solutions to team leaders and managers that help them achieve excellence and sustainable performance. Visit our website at https://act2manage.eu. About the author. Tamás Cservenyák has been working with leaders in various capacities for over 25 years. Together with his colleagues at Act2Manage, they have guided more than 150 groups through their 6-month deliberate leadership programs, working with both local and international manufacturing companies, IT and retail businesses, financial service providers, the SSC sector, and a Big Four audit firm. For 3 years, he was a member of the board of the International Coach Federation's Hungarian chapter, and in 2012, he served as the president of the local organization. Since 2010, he has been the author of a popular leadership blog and 6 ebooks on leadership and teaching. Previously, he worked as a KPMG Academy faculty member and served as managing partner at DBM Hungary. Connect with Tamas on LinkedIn, https://www.linkedin.com/and/Cservenyak Tamas.